Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I want to show you how to bind a book. And in this case, it's a main lesson book from our Ocean main lesson block. So I just showed you my son's work for this unit, and at the back of this folder I keep his rough drafts. So for this project, I am going to use my Silhouette Cameo in order to cut a title. This is a digital cutting machine that hooks up to your computer, and I thought that those white letters would pop really nicely against his background. I'm also going to use my sticker machine in order to turn these into stickers, but you could use a glue stick instead. So now I'm going to put these title words down on his front cover as well as the book cover. And even though the white pops pretty well, I think I'm going to outline them with a Sharpie, and that's really going to make those letters stand out. So that is his title page. Now I want to go ahead and cut the front and back covers, and I went ahead and did this using 140-pound watercolor paper, and then I just watercolored the cover. And then I want to trim it down to the size of his book, and in this case it's 9 inches by 12 inches. So I have a front and back cover, and I want to add that title to the front cover, and those white letters really look great against that blue background. Alright, so now we need to actually bind the book, and to do this I first want to make sure that all the pages are in the correct location and the correct orientation, because we're going to bind this down on the left side. Now I'm going to get out my Heidi Swapp Cinch machine in order to bind the book. You also need these metal coils in order to do this. And now I'm going to figure out which levers to leave in so that we can punch the paper and which ones you don't. So it's a little bit confusing at first, but there are a lot of tutorials out there. This is not specifically a tutorial on how to use this machine. It's more just one way in order to bind a main lesson book. So I did make a couple of mistakes, and I just want to say that when you are punching your papers, to punch them individually, you can definitely punch them as a set, but I found that because my papers were of different weight, and even though they were the same size, there were some small variations, I ended up with some right here that were cut kind of off a little bit. So in order to avoid that happening, I would just cut them individually, or punch them individually rather. The next thing is that when you actually thread your paper into the coil, it's a lot easier to do one at a time. Once I started doing this, I realized that some of my holes were actually mispunched, and I had to go back in and punch them individually anyway. So I ended up taking more time because I tried to punch multiple papers at one time. Now this machine is very strong and durable, and you can actually punch up to 20 sheets at one time. But I would just recommend that you do that when they are all exactly the same. The next thing I want to do is just trim down my coil. You can actually do this before you thread your paper through. Using wire cutters makes this super easy. You saw that cut very simply. Don't use your scissors, you'll probably ruin them. And then at last you want to just fold that coil down. Now originally I had used a coil that was probably about 5/8 of an inch, and it was too small. So before I actually finished this, I went ahead and I recoiled it with a larger size binder, and I believe this one was about 3/4 of an inch. So this worked really well for our main lesson book. Alright, so this is one way to do a main lesson book if you want to use loose sheets of paper. You could always just put this in a 3-ring binder if your pages were 8.5 by 11 and they were in the vertical orientation. But since we want to do so much watercoloring, I found that it was a lot easier to do it with this method and then just bind the whole book afterwards. And if you want to check out some of the projects that we did for our Ocean main lesson block, you can tap on the screen right now. And don't forget that you can find me on a daily basis by visiting me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.